There's a reason ASE and OEM training matters. True repair professionals understand this, and it's the reason they partner with asTech. Our patented cloud-based software was created to improve the customer experience and allows access to hundreds of ASE and dealer-trained technicians. Today's vehicle electronic systems are complex. They can control steering, braking, and acceleration. Working with our calibration centers provides the technical data and know-how required to repair compromised advanced driver assist systems properly. Our asTech mobile team is available in over 30 markets and at your service in those times when you need an expert set of hands and guidance. We consider it a privilege to help you thrive, which is why we work tirelessly to provide resources, advice, and most importantly, documentation for our customers. When you work with asTech, you can always count on the right tool and the right tech.
So this is the inaugural ILC ARC360 product showcase event featuring asTech, the remote diagnostics specialists utilizing OEM data, tools, technology, and technicians. Thank you to everyone for taking the time to join us today. As we continue to push the envelope in event formats. The session, which comes live from the UK and the USA, promises to offer a fascinating insight into diagnostics management and how vehicle technology is truly impacting the sector. So bringing you the session today will be Richard Taylor, who I'm sure many of you know, European Business Development Director at asTech, along with subject matter expert in the US is Jake Rodenroth, Director of OEM and Industry Technical Relations at asTech. So as with all ILC and ARC events, ARC360 events, we want you to be engaged and interact as much as possible. And I know these guys do too. So please use the chat function, drop some general comments, observations in there as we go. And any specific questions, please put those in the Q&A. We will scoop those up at the end and hopefully have a good session where we'll get some answers there. If there's anything that we don't get round to touch upon today, if there's anything the guys need to go away and research a little bit further, they will obviously be in contact as a follow-up to the session. I advise everyone to put your settings on full screen or speaker view, as it is, if you can, because then that means the guys will be enlarged across your screen and you'll be able to see exactly what's going on. So I will step away and I will see you at the end. But in the meantime, I'm going to hand over to Richard Taylor. Richard, over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Hi, everyone. This is going to be quite brief for me, so I don't want to take up too much time as this session is more about the information that my colleague Jake will be giving. But I would like to say a big thank you to everyone who has taken time out of their diary today to attend this session. On that basis, I'd like to hand over to Jake Rodenroth. Jake is our Director of OEM Technical Relationships, and as such works very closely with the vehicle manufacturers. So over to you, Jake. And if anyone's got any questions, as Mark's mentioned, please do comment as we go through. I will keep an eye on the questions, as will Mark, and we'll answer those questions at the end of the session. Thank you. Cheers, Mark. Thanks, Jake.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm seeing a lot of good afternoons in the chat. It is very much morning here in the USA. We're actually coming to you from Jacksonville, Florida, on the east coast of the USA. I'm actually standing in our Nissan hands-on training calibration center. So basically, this is a center that asTech partnered with Nissan, and we work with the Certified Collision Repair Network here in the U.S. And those network shops will send us technicians that want to learn how to properly perform advanced driver assist system calibration on Nissan and Infiniti vehicles. So in the room with me, I've got 5 Nissans in here, or 4 Nissans and an Infiniti that are of various states of trim level. So we'll talk about why that's important here in a minute. But all of them are 2020s and one of them is a 21. So brand new vehicles, the newest technology, and certainly the newest tools and service manuals and such to go with it. I want to introduce my colleague, Bill Grayhead. Say, hey, Bill. Good morning. So Bill's going to help me navigate this thing for you. We've set up a couple of little workstations so we could show you not only the scan tools, but we could also show you the different calibrations that Nissan vehicles have. I've also got a small segment on some aftermarket tooling and some aftermarket or some OEM targeting from other OEMs. So with that, I'm going to turn my camera here and start you with the first workstation. So one of the challenges that we see in vehicle repair is that service information is typically overlooked in a lot of cases. And one of the biggest challenges that we see with advanced driver assist calibration is that shops simply don't know when they need to do it. They don't know what types of things cause ADAS calibrations. So things like four-wheel alignments, bumper repairs, collision repairs, glass, windshield replacements, things like that. And, the service manuals are written around perfect vehicles that haven't been hit and have all OEM factory parts on them. So as you can see, these test vehicles that we've set up, the bumper covers don't match because we know that the technician is going to take the bumper covers a bunch off of the vehicle a bunch. We actually put fake cargo in the vehicle. That's another thing that we test them on to make sure that they remove a customer's personal assets out of the vehicle so it doesn't create a weight problem. We're really detailed here at asTech. We want to make sure that they follow the same process when it comes to calibrating vehicles very carefully. So I won't bore you with paperwork, but I wanted to show you just some of the information that a repairer would need to look up to do an ADAS calibration. So you can see the first document here is 10 pages worth of information. This is for Nissan's around view monitor. So this is the 360 camera system around the vehicle. So this calibration, or bird's eye fine tuning as they would call it, would be required if you removed a grille, a trunk lid, or a mirror, or something to that effect. Or if you replaced one of the 4 cameras around the vehicle, you're going to require to do this calibration. So we'll show you what this looks like visually here in a second. 10 pages worth of information. If they were to do a windshield or replace the camera or even R&I the camera, we've got 13 pages for the lane camera. So that's the one mounted in the windshield. We also pull the repair procedures to give you some context for rear bumper and front bumper, 5 pages here, 6 pages there. So, information that a repair technician would need to take the time to read and understand exactly what the OEM is trying to tell them. We jump to the radar system in the front, 25 pages worth of information. And I've met a lot of technicians that are patient enough to sit there and read 25 pages of information on every vehicle, but it's what's required. And there's a lot of detailed steps that you don't want to overlook. A lot of these vehicles have different requirements in the work procedure based on trim level. So on the new Titan, the Pro 4X is the off-road version and is 10 centimeters higher than the basic SV or Platinum Reserve model. So it has a different lane camera procedure because of that. So the ride height really drives the requirements around the vehicle as well. Something new on the 21 Rogue that I'm going to show you here in a minute, they added a calibration to the blind spot system that didn't exist on any of their other vehicles. So just shows you that staying current with the service manuals is critical. So I'm going to take us to our first vehicle. This vehicle is a 2020 Altima. It is currently set up for Nissan's ICC, or Intelligent Cruise Control calibration. When you look at a base model Altima that is an S platform, it may only have emergency braking. As you go up to an SV and SL, then you'll have Intelligent Cruise Control and emergency braking. This vehicle is a Platinum, so this is the highest trim level you can buy, and it has Pro Pilot Assist. So all 3 trim levels will have radar, but they have 3 different versions of software that determine what features that trim level gets. So Bill, if you would go ahead and share your screen, I'm going to walk over here and show you the asTech. The asTech here is just pointed up here at the top. And as you can see, all it is it's a high-tech extension cord, the length of the internet, that's plugged into a factory scan tool. So this vehicle is running to the internet, as you can see, going up to our spool up here, right? And it's connected to the vehicle. We run the hazards to make sure the bus in the vehicle stays awake. And then if we go over to Bill, you're sharing your screen, Bill? There you go. Yep. And hit share down there at the bottom. There we go. All right. I hope you guys can see that okay. So on the left-hand side with all the little red X's, those are all factory scan tools that are in a data center that if our technicians need to access a scan tool for different manufacturers, they're all there in that left-hand stack. So we've virtualized all the factory scan tools, kind of like a big library where you just go check out a book and get the one you want to read, right? So as you can see, we have a lot of Nissan tools in there. What you're looking at on the screen is the Nissan Consult 3 software platform that is the factory scan tool for Nissan. And as you can see, we have a variety of controllers in this vehicle. On the left-hand side, you'll see they have little acronyms for what they're called. Laser radar is the radar in the front. Sonar is the parking sensors. Side radar is the blind spot monitor, lane camera, engine, and ABS, right? So you also see that it has current fault codes in this vehicle. These vehicles have been bugged for a learner to figure out what's wrong with them. So we've gone in and damaged the ADAS systems in this vehicle, and an attendee to our class has to figure out why they're damaged. So as you can see, we have current fault codes in the front laser radar. And then if you hit the freeze frame data there, Bill, FFD. So FFD stands for freeze frame data, gives us a timestamp when the fault happened. So at 109 miles, this vehicle experienced a laser radar issue. So we'll close out of that. And as you can see at the top, we've got a couple of different tabs here. I won't bore you with a lot of it, but you see we've got data monitor, we've got work support, we've got ECU identification. The one I want to draw your attention to is that work support tab. As you can see, it populates on this vehicle for anybody that logs into the software. And this is where you send the command for the front radar to actually start learning and looking for the target. So when we do that, we can see that it gives us a specification. So as you can see down here at the bottom, we've got a vertical angle at negative 9.97 and a horizontal angle at 1.10. So when we look in the service manual, this vehicle tells us that specification should be plus or minus 3 degrees, and that's it. So this ought to jump off a page and tell a technician you've got a really serious radar issue. That radar is pointing at the sky, and that's not good. So those are the kinds of things that, you know, scan tools don't save the world. It takes an experienced technician that understands what the scan tool is telling them and a service manual to stay current on the newest models. So Bill, go ahead and stop your share. Red block at the top. There you go. All right, so I take you back to the vehicle that we were just connected to, and I want to visualize what the scan tool is telling us. So this is a radar bracket that mounts to the front of the car, and that is a radar, a front ICC radar. And what the scan tool is telling us is that the vertical angle of that radar is bent. And that's because we went in and hit it with a hammer and bent the radar bracket. So we want our person to come through this course and find that, change the radar bracket, and then run through the calibration process. So as you can see, this is the factory target for radar for Nissan and vehicles. And you see it uses a basic alignment head on the wheel. And part of the documentation process that we grade the students on is to make sure they check tire pressure and they document it on the floor. So as you can see, we can write on the floor on this vehicle in the shop. And that helps an insurance partner see that all of the steps were actually followed and that they were identified in the service manual and then actually captured in a photo. As you can see, we've got the vehicle battery supported over here as well. Battery support and diagnostics go hand in hand, whether you're using factory scan tools or you're using asTech. You want to make sure that the control modules that are the power robbers of the vehicle stay active when the key is off and the engine is on. So just give you another look at the asTech there. Shows you that it's connected, shows you the voltage, shows you as the scan is in progress, and the VIN number is displayed. The idea behind the asTech is you don't need a technically savvy diagnostic person at the car side of the vehicle. Not the case if you're using, you know, either aftermarket or OEM scan tools. You need somebody that understands what the information is telling them. So Bill could literally be in another state, another country, across the water over there with you guys, and looking at this vehicle remotely and working with somebody here in the US to actually calibrate it. So I'm going to move on to our next vehicle here. So this is the 21 Rogue, Nissan Rogue, brand new platform for 2021. We literally got this vehicle a couple of weeks ago, and it came with a new host of challenges, I'll say. A couple of different things. Has a twin radar system in the front, which is different than everything else. Has both short range and long range radar, and has a couple of other peculiar things around its calibrations. The blind spot monitoring system is different in this vehicle. It's bumper mounted and requires the technician to reset it with the factory tool, and also perform a dynamic drive test. So it wants to see the wheel speed above 20 miles an hour for a specified distance, and also it either passes or it fails. So we find that blind spot calibration in particular is challenging, and there's a high failure rate for a variety of reasons. You know, if the quarter panel has been damaged, the rear fender has been damaged and not properly repaired and not aligned, the radar not aligned prior to calibration, we see a lot of failures around that stuff. So as you can see, this is the lane camera target. This is a factory, what they call a J target for Nissan Infiniti vehicles. There are 3 different patterns that Nissan Infiniti offer. And some of their vehicles have a pedestrian detection system, which has a twin camera system in the windshield. And so a different target required for that. So you have a couple of options as far as placement goes. You can use a whiteboard like this. This is a specified size that's identified in the service manual. And as you can see, the measurements are written on the face. And we have to hang strings and plumb bobs to find absolute center. And so there's a lot of steps. There's a lot of things that go into setting up these vehicles for a proper calibration. As you can see, more documentation on the floor. We use the standard measuring system over here in the US, but everything in the manual is in metric. So we convey that on the floor. So as you can see, the tire pressure is identified. We want to show that's on the front of the vehicle, those kinds of things. So this vehicle also has, starting with the new Sentra that I'm going to show you here in a second, this vehicle also has Nissan's Central Gateway. So the Central Gateway is a digital padlock for the car. That's the best way to explain it. So it's a digital padlock that does not allow unauthorized devices to access the diagnostic network in the vehicle. So even if you have a Nissan Consult factory scan tool, but it's not up to date, you will not be able to access the Central Gateway in this vehicle. So the Central Gateway locks you out of certain systems like the ADAS systems. So the radar, the lane camera, blind spot monitoring, and around view monitor. So we're you're powering that back up. Okay. So we're gonna reboot the PC over here and show you some of the systems on the Rogue. Before I do that, I'm gonna jump over here to the Sentra. So this is the 2020 Sentra. It was Nissan's first vehicle to get the Central Gateway. It came out in December of 19. And with little to no warning, literally they put this gateway in the vehicle and didn't really tell anybody. So I have an aftermarket scan tool connected to this one. And when we ran the health check, you can see it only captured 3 control modules in this vehicle, mainly around emissions. So engine and transmission. It did pick up the occupancy detection as well. There are 22 control modules in this vehicle. And as you can see, the aftermarket only got 3. So the security gateway module vehicles posed a big challenge for the aftermarket scan tools. I'm not saying that aftermarket scan tools don't have a place, but in collision repair, where you have the newest vehicles in the worst shape, we see these vehicles before anybody. So in collision repair, literally for asTech, we've done over 285,000 2020 models in the year 2020 alone. So it's we see them very quickly, and a lot of times before the dealers. So I'm going to walk over and I want to stop for just a second if we have any questions. Richard, do we have any questions?
Sorry, you had to come off on mute. No, I've been answering the questions that have been raised in terms of the conversation questions. So I think you're good to carry on, Jake.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to go over here and share a screen real quick. I'm going to stop the video. And we're going to share our screen. Okay, so as you can see, we're actually running through the Nissan Rogue at this point. So the console is connected directly to it, and it's reading the VIN. This is where, you know, folks think a scan should take like 2 minutes, and sometimes it takes a little bit. But what this thing does is it will go through and look at the build data on this Nissan. So it'll say, is this an S model? Is it a Sport? Is it a SL, SV? Is it a Platinum? And the trim level, as I said before, really drives what systems does it have. Does it have, ProPilot? Does it have just intelligent cruise control? Whatever it might be. No problem. Say again.
Sure.
Yeah, that's fine. All right, we're going to come back to the Rogue. It seems like we're having the even directly connected Nissan's tool is acting up here, so we'll get that figured out. So I'm going to move over here to the Infinity. So on the Infinity, a lot of vehicle, like automotive industry first technologies on this vehicle. So 3 of them that kind of jump off of the page. For a long time, we've had drive-by-wire throttles, which are virtually in every vehicle nowadays. We've gone away from cables and rod linkage and things to the engine. This vehicle has drive-by-wire shifting and drive-by-wire steering. So even a basic fundamental skill that we've done forever in 4-wheel alignments has 3 different calibrations required to control the steering. So before I show you more on the steering, I want to show you what this vehicle is actually set up for. As you can see, there are strings running around the vehicle. This one is set up for the 360-degree camera, the around view monitor calibration. So if the shop changed the grille, did the mirror, whatever it might be, and as you can see, the scan tool and the radio in this vehicle actually work together. So the technician has to sit in the vehicle, with the scan tool, and we can control values to fine tune the camera system. And then we have to look at the radio to line up the red lines with the lines on the floor. And I'll close my door so you get a full view of it. If a shop went in and serviced this camera system, you could have a red X in one of the 4 boxes. And then if we need to make adjustments to the camera system, we can do that with the console. So we literally will go in and change values on each camera, whether it's driver's side mirror, passenger side mirror, rear trunk lid, whatever it might be, and make adjustments to the line on the floor. So when you go in and you service one of those systems, this is a calibration that often gets overlooked. There's a lot of dealers, unfortunately, that won't take the time and put the lines on the floor. Some of them don't have the space to do it. As you can see, we have a really clean floor in here. If you're dealing with a dusty, dirty shop, it can be a difficult one to do accurately. So as you go through, all our cars are going to sleep.
They're all going to sleep on us.
Okay. Yeah, we had them up for about 30 minutes. So as I said, when you pull your service information and you start reading through all of the steps required to do this and then actually start doing the work, it can be quite time consuming. Now, I believe that as technology goes on and OEMs interface with more of the aftermarket and third-party tooling companies, that the processes and the tooling will get better. They'll get easier to understand. The cars will calibrate quicker. But today, it's a lot of string. It's a lot of plumb bobs. It's a lot of that kind of stuff. So, all right. So I'm going to take you back to another workstation here. So besides Nissan and Infinity, we have other targeting systems in place here just to show you that there's no standardization. Everybody does it a little bit differently. So just on the other side of this board, I'll show you the lane camera for Nissan again, so you can see that. It has this pattern. And then on the back side here, this is a Subaru EyeSight target. So this is for the Subaru camera system in the windshield. Below that, we've got the Honda, the forward camera system for Honda vehicles. That's this pattern here. For the millimeter wave radar for Honda, we actually have a radar cone. And yes, that is Honda PVC pipe that they have you buy. So that is a factory tool. This big one here stands about 3.5 feet tall. This only works on the Honda lane watch system. So this was an early camera system that came out on the passenger side mirror of certain Honda vehicles. And they've since gone back to a radar system for blind spot on both sides, but this was an early one that came out. This is a Subaru radar target. So as you can see, it's very similar to the Honda target, a little bit different size, and the pole is a little bit different. And, there's a lot of companies out there doing aftermarket targeting systems as well. So I've got a couple of those. This is a Nissan factory target. This is a Nissan aftermarket Target. And as you can see, the size difference is pretty big. So if I zoom out and let you see that, pretty big. Down here, these are Toyota factory targets for their camera systems. So that's another one that's a challenge. When you look at what kind of Toyota am I working on, a Prius may only want to see a 120 millimeter target, where an Avalon may want to see a 160 millimeter target, and then a Camry would want to see a 180 millimeter target. So depending on what model you're working on will determine what target you use. And it's one that is actually in the repair procedure when you pull it, but you still need to measure it. So you need to measure the size of the blocks, the size of the overall target, and make sure that you get the correct one. So a little bit of insight on how other OEMs are doing it. Every OEM has a different targeting system and a different OEM scan tool as well. So tremendous expense for a shop to try and take on all makes, all models, and use all factory scan tools, all factory targets, and just very tough to scale. So we got the Infinity to wake back up. We got a question?
Yeah, sorry, Jake, just one question's come in. So the question is, we're looking at the latest cars. If you had an older vehicle and an older tool, would it connect or would it need updating?
So very likely, that's a good question. So very likely the scan tool will work just fine. But as with the Honda, this is an older Honda blind spot system. I want to say they quit using this system in like 2016, 2017, somewhere in there. 2018 cars actually saw the radar systems. So completely different process for the radar. So you would need to make a targeting change, but the the scan tool would work just fine. So that's a good question. We've even seen that on the 21 Rogue. The 21 Rogue has a different procedure for the blind spot than the Altima, even though they're the same family of vehicles. So it didn't like something there, did it? So as you can see, we've got console back up, and we can make adjustments on the X and Y axis of the camera system. So he's on the driver's side camera currently, and he can change the values. And when he changes values here, you can verify the image on the radio. So then it will it'll update the camera image on the radio. And basically you're just lining those red lines up with the lines that you put on the floor. So if you put bad lines on the floor, very likely you're going to have bad lines on the camera as well. And, these kinds of things affect the way the customer sees their vehicle. I mean, as a Nissan owner, I can tell you, I use this system every morning when I'm backing that big old truck out to make sure I'm not going to hit a kid. So it's definitely something that we want to make sure is performed when the vehicle's camera systems are serviced. So, all right. Well, Richard, I want to open it up for some questions. There's a ton of stuff in here. Is there anything coming across?
Not at the moment, Jake. That was the only question that we've had in so far. So if anybody else has any questions that they want to specifically throw at Jake, then please do so. It's all rather quiet, so you're either confusing everybody or you've answered everybody's questions.
Sorry, it's a lot to take in, that's for sure. So,
okay, there's a question here about vehicle coverage for the UK market. I'll obviously answer that question unless you want to jump in, Jake. But
sure, no, go ahead.
As standard, we have pretty much every mainstream vehicle that you would expect us to have as far as the device is concerned. There are gaps in terms of the coverage, but that's mainly around some of the more specific marks, such as your higher spec vehicles, your Lotuses, your Teslas we obviously don't touch. And there's the prestige vehicles that we don't have, but if it's your mainstream vehicles that you'd expect to see on the road, we have those. We are continually monitoring opportunities as far as the UK market is concerned, and of course the European market. But if someone wants to direct that question straight to me, I'm happy to provide exact details of the vehicle manufacturers that we have on record. Let me just see if there's anything else that people have commented or mentioned. Okay, there's one here, a question. Do you predict more ADAS components will be self-calibrating in the future? Thank you, Dane, for that question. Jake?
I don't know that self-calibrating is the word. I think that an easier way to do the overall process, yes. I think that we've already seen that with some of the Toyota vehicles starting in 21. The one that I caught was a 21 Highlander, and forever and ever, Toyotas have been static. So they've been static static calibrations, and that was your only choice, right? They've, in the 21 vehicles, they started adding a dynamic process to where the vehicle can learn with the drive cycle, very similar to the US domestics. So that's something that I think the process is going to get better. The camera and radar systems are only going to get more intelligent. We've already seen that with the Rogue, as discussed. So it's going to get better. I don't know that self-calibrating is the word, because at the end of the day, you're still dealing with nuts and bolts and things that plug in and that are subjected to impacts and power loss and fuses and, a repair that disturbs a ground and all those kinds of things. So you still need a technician that understands how the system works and to ensure that those kinds of things don't happen. So the other thing, let's pull the bumper off the front of that real quick. I'm going to show you the direct adaptive steering system in the Infinity. Unfortunately, they put it in a really good spot right where it's going to get hit. But basically what you're looking at here is this vehicle does not have a steering shaft that is connected to the steering rack. It has a shaft that is connected to a clutch, and the clutch engages and disengages. So the vehicle's not running, you can still turn the wheels. But when the vehicle is running, all of the steering happens electronically. So under the front here, you can see there are two giant control modules right under the headlight, and that is the direct adaptive steering system. So I don't know, we looked at the price tag on those. Those are quite expensive. But the bigger concern is that four-wheel alignments are commonplace in the automotive world, and there are 3 calibrations required to initialize that system properly. It also ties into the blind spot intervention on this vehicle. So when the vehicle's in the lane driving and it detects a vehicle in the blind spot and you attempt to turn, it will intervene and actually keep you in the lane using direct adaptive steering. So we see that kind of sensor fusion a lot, where control modules have multiple jobs, not just steering. They're also tied to blind spots. So the other thing that we're going to show you is the VCR motor. So this is a world's first engine. This is the variable compression ratio turbo engine. So basically this vehicle does not have a connecting rod. I've got a visual over here to show you how that works. Very cool. It can actually change the compression of the vehicle electronically. So when you look at it, you can see the piston can actually change low compression, high compression, and it uses this electric armature on the back to actually move the piston position electronically. So little nerdy there, but very cool technology. Essentially eliminates the turbo lag. You don't feel a lot of turbo lag. Another one that we see is this is the active torque rod. So this is an electric motor mount. So that motor mount can literally push back on the engine to reduce noise, vibration, harshness. It is capable of storing DTCs. So if there's a front end impact in collision repair, we see a lot of motor mounts. So that's one that pops up. So I'm gonna go back to the Rogue here real quick. As we were prepping for the call, our scan tools went to sleep. So bear with me just one second.
I got some more questions, Jake, actually.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so another question come from Pete. So thanks, Pete, and for the question again. So he's put the vehicles in the USA have different specifications from, lost my screen, hang on, sorry. Have different specifications from those of the UK cars. Will the US still be able to access the ECUs? I'm thinking more about general diagnostics problems rather than ADAS. Or will your center in the dark north, apologies people who live in the dark north, i.e. Peterlee, be able to gain access? So do you want to talk briefly, Jake, about how we set up? And obviously from a UK perspective, we do have all of the OE tools in our office in Peterlee. So we would generally access those. But from a US perspective, in terms of accessing the European portal and working on European cars, can you explain how that would work, Jake, please?
Yeah, so the OEM tools that we use in the UK or in Europe are European sourced OEM tools, not US OEM sourced tools. So different specification there. You also have vehicles over there that unfortunately we will never see. We don't get the Renaults, we don't have the Seats and Skodas and the Vauxhalls and all those kind of cars, right? So we had to, Citroen, Peugeot, there's some other ones in there as well. So those brands we don't have here in the US. And when we went to European market out there, we had to source those factory scan tools for those cars and then obviously optimize them for asTech usage. So Richard, I think you could take it from there if I missed something.
No. I think that covers it off. I think that the next question actually probably is more of a relevant one to discuss, actually, from Jerry Braddock. So thank you, Jerry, for the question. Is when carrying out remote calibrations, you need a competent person to set up the vehicle for calibration. That's more of a statement than a question, but I think it would be useful, Jake, if you could explain some of the issues that they may find if the boards, etc., have not been set up correctly when you're trying to do the calibrations, and what the technicians in the body shop would expect to see.
Yeah, Joey, that's a great comment. You know, the scan tool really plays a fairly small role in the overall process. The prep of the vehicle, the review of the service information, and then actually setting up the vehicle for calibration is the big part. And so you're absolutely right. You know, if you're skipping over those steps and ignoring the tire pressure and ignoring cleaning windshields and all those little things, you can create environmental failures. If you've got a building that has sunlight, you know, pouring through the windshields and you're trying to do camera systems, that's another one that can cause a problem. So you're right. It really takes a competent person on the other end. I can tell you that we're very, very selective with the partners that we work with here in the U.S. in a remote capacity. We want to make sure they've had some training, that they understand why we're serious about this. And it's another reason we launched this class for Nissan Infiniti. Nissan and Infiniti aren't the hardest to calibrate. They're kind of in the middle. I look at them like they're, you know, not the easiest, they're not the hardest. And it really gives our student that comes through this a good perception of what right looks like to prep one of these vehicles, regardless of the brand. So you're absolutely right. That's something we want to be really careful of. So I'm going to direct you back to the screen real quick. Just wanted to show you the difference on the secure gateway vehicles. So this is the 21 Rogue. And as you can see, if I went in, you can see we've got a variety of problems with this car. If I went in and said I wanted to do the front radar system, you can see the central gateway has got me locked out. It's got the little red stoplight there. It won't let me do anything. And the work support tab does not exist. So the work support tab is where we send the command to the radar. So if I click on this, I actually have to log in with Nissan credentials to open the digital padlock on this vehicle. So that's a change that we've seen, like I said, starting with the Sentra and now the Rogue. And I believe as Nissan facelifts and changes platforms on their vehicles, you know, with the new Altima. We also have the Frontier and the Pathfinder being announced today. So that's, you know, it's only going to continue. We know that Subaru and Mercedes-Benz also have security gateways coming in their vehicles. So OEMs know that their vehicles are connected to the internet and they're trying to protect them from hackers and from people trying to do harm. So you're only going to see more of this kind of stuff.
So Jake, so on that point, actually, Jake, great question from Steve White. So Steve said, you mentioned the central gateway on the newer Nissans that prevent aftermarket VAC scanners reading the fault to the same capacity as a factory equipment. Do you think this will become more mainstream with other main brands, or will it be worked around by the aftermarket? Great question.
Well, it's a good question, right? So there's no question that the aftermarket's going to find a way to work around. The problem is they're not easy to work around. So in 2018, the FCA vehicles, Fiat Chrysler Automotive vehicles, had security gateways in them, and it required a technician using an aftermarket tool to physically disconnect the module in the car. So in some cars, you had to take the radio out of the car, dig into the dash, take the module out, and then plug in a harness to connect to the diagnostic network. So really a tough process just to scan a car. A little more challenging on the Nissan vehicles. But you know, I know that at some point the aftermarket will find a workaround. I'm sure of it. The question is when. You know, I know that Nissan is working on a process for the aftermarket because they're very pro, you know, right to repair. But that's not coming out till March of 21. So that, you know, I look at it like from our perspective, from an asTech perspective, we repair a lot of vehicles from now to March. And you know, when the Sentra came out last year, we had to access that car. So we can't afford to not have coverage to those cars, which is why we use the factory tools.
And link to that, so the next question from Matthew Cooper is coming about, if we purchase aftermarket targets, will they work with the OEM diagnostics equipment?
Well, you know, I can't say whether they'll work or not work. The question is, you know, is it in the service manual? And I always ask myself as a technician, who says you can do that? You know, I look at it like if I had to defend this, you know, legally, and they say, well, what targeting system was used? It calls out a factory target number in the manual. Is that what you used? it becomes a very difficult conversation, right? It's not like it's a screwdriver or, something to that effect. This is a targeting system that is responsible for calibrating a safety system. So, not to say I can appreciate what the aftermarkets are trying to do, but they really need to have an OEM give the nod and say, yes, that calibrates our vehicles back to the specification to which we engineered them to. So, at some point, hopefully there is some kind of collaboration like that, but today that's just not existent.
Is that a good point, Jake, to mention about the differences you've seen in terms of the boards on the size of the squares on some of the different boards that we've tested and played with?
Yeah. And like I said, let's just 1 second here. I don't know if you can see my camera here.
You're still on screen.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just exit out of that. Sorry, Richard. I actually have one of the boards over here. I was going to show you.
Yeah, you're still on the computer though, so we're still seeing the screen that you had for the tool. That's it, perfect.
All right. How about now?
Yeah, just turn your screen.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
So as I showed you over here, this OEM aftermarket, and the pattern is irrelevant, but I can turn it like that, right? But you can see the size difference and, black corners, it's a black and white target. The camera is looking for black and white, right? So, the way I look at it, these are really well made. They're aluminum. They're really nice. It feels like they'll hold up. You know what I mean? These are typically paper or particle board. You know what I mean? They're a little softer, but not to say that it won't work, but I just look at it like if something were to happen and I had to defend it, I don't know, So that's a good question.
Thank you. I think we've run out of questions, so I don't know what else you have to. I think is it worth also mentioning about the work that you guys do that we will be looking to do in the UK in terms of supporting the insurance market, some of the work that you guys have done in terms of physically sending technicians to shops to repair vehicles that have not been done correctly. Some of the things that you've seen, that kind of level of information would be useful, I think, for people to understand.
Yeah, actually, this course, the Nissan course behind me, it's a 2-day course for technicians. It's hands-on, where they actually have to get dirty and take bumpers off and actually repair a car. We are working on a 1-day course version of it for insurers to expose them not only to the technologies, but the process as well. One of the goals of this class for everyone is to be able to audit a calibration that's performed for you by somebody else, whether it's a dealer or a mobile technician or some third party. How do you know it was right? How do you know that all of the steps were covered and captured as part of the calibration? So that's something that we want to make sure that if they know it's intelligent cruise control that they're trying to calibrate, that they know that the fuel level needed to be full, that a 4-wheel alignment had happened, that the tire pressure was right, the vehicle hasn't been modified. That's another question, the problem that we have, where the vehicle's been lifted or bigger wheels and tires or whatever it might be. So those kinds of things, we want to make sure that, the shop understands how to audit an ADAS calibration. And then when they choose to do it themselves, what the process looks like. So, but that's also insurers. Insurers need to understand, what they're paying for. We don't want them to be surprised by something that isn't correct. So that's a good question.
Fab, thank you. We've done with the questions. Mark is trying to encourage people to ask some more questions. So we may or may not get some more questions. But nothing's coming through. Okay,
no problem. I'm going to touch on electric vehicles for a minute. So that's the latest craze that folks are talking about. You figure, and I think we witnessed it on this call, some of these cars fell off on the scan tools. You got to remember you're working with 12 volts. So you're expecting the computers in the car to communicate back to the scan tool with 12 volts. A little different animal with the electric vehicles. The lowest end vehicles are at 400 volts, and the higher end Teslas, the Porsche Taycan, are at 800 volts. So that changes things dramatically. That enhances speed electronically within the vehicle to where modules can talk to each other faster. It also allows a lot of internet capability, whether the vehicle's running or not running. So, it changes the game dramatically. It also changes the repair side of things as well. So, I ask shops when they decide to go look at service manuals, when do they go decide to look at it? And most of them will tell you that, well, we look at structural, we look at airbags, we look at mechanical stuff, but they don't look at how to change a headlight or how to take a bumper cover off or how to change a radiator, right? And so with electric vehicles, you will see processes around that change to where on an electric vehicle, it still has a cooling system, but it doesn't have a water pump that's run by a belt, right? So it's an electric water pump. So now you've got to go in with a scan tool and actually turn that on to bleed the cooling system. And so, for the insurers on the phone, I want you to understand that if somebody burns up an inverter in an electric vehicle because they didn't bleed the cooling system properly, that's something that you need to be aware of what that process is, right? So I just look at it like every repair, no matter how big or how small, we don't assume that we know it. We always research it just to make sure that we're not missing anything. So the electric vehicles will create a significant amount of challenges. They're not hard. They're just different. Yeah. And you'll see a lot of things tied to diagnostics, a lot of parts that are tied to diagnostics. So to put them on the vehicle, you actually have to use a scan tool. So
cool. Okay, there's one more question coming, Jake, actually from Matthew Cooper. So Matthew says, when carrying out an initial scan for the estimate, what do the reports look like? How do they identify the different modules?
So is he talking about an asTech? I guess he's talking about an asTech report.
Yeah, report.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. So first things first is we want to identify the factory scan tool that was used on that vehicle. Those scan tools can change by platform. So literally when the Mazda 3 came out, they went to the MDAR scan tool. It only worked on that car, right? So we identify what factory scan tool was used on that platform. We identify the control modules in the vehicle, what the OEM actually calls them. And then if there's DTCs that are active, or we see, an open recall, we see, steering angles pointing at 28 degrees and you're supposed to be at 0, those kinds of things, we're going to call that out to the shop that, hey, you need to go look at, perform a visual inspection. You may need to do some pinout tests with a digital volt and ohm meter. Scan tools aren't magic wands. You still have to perform repairs and visual inspections and things like that. But basically, we want to help you fix the car. We want to help you figure out what's going on as early in the process as possible. We talked about the DAS system on this vehicle. If you've got a $3,000 control module that was damaged and it doesn't look like it was damaged, you would want to know that in the beginning of the repair. It's not something that you don't want to find out at the end. And as these vehicles with ADAS age, $1,000 radars in the front can total loss the car. So we want to make sure that we capture those as early as possible, which is why you see so many OEMs recommend a pre-repair scan to capture such damaged parts.
Thank you. Question for me and Baker, which I can answer, which is, do the repairs have to book in a time slot for recalibration assistance, or is there a queuing system? I think the answer to that question at the moment is we're getting to jobs in around about 1.5 to 2 minutes. So at the moment, there's no queuing system and there's no booking time slots. As the job comes in, our technicians are picking up that work automatically. That's where we sit today. We have a business plan to increase the number of technicians we have here in the UK, which of course also cover Europe, and we monitor that on a regular basis.
Yep.
That's, I think, is every question. I'm conscious now of time, so there's 20 past. I did see Mark pop up on the screen earlier.
No, great stuff, guys. There is just one. I know we referenced potential one-day training course. For engineers, insurance engineers. There's one about calibration training in Europe. Is that something that's on the radar?
Yes. Yeah. It was the boss asking that question actually. So yes, that there is a something we are looking at the moment is, of course, in the UK, repairers are going to be going through the training process now for the new requirements that are coming in as of the 1st of April, as will our technicians at asTech. One of the things that we're looking at, do I create a business model which it has a Jake in the UK or a Jake in the Europe? I'd love to pinch Jake's time all the time to do these things, because as people hopefully have seen, he's an expert in this. So yes, it's something that we're looking at building for our European business, is the same technical knowledge and training abilities that we have in the US.
Yeah, Mark, I think my response to that is just, like I started at the beginning of the call, this stuff changes too fast for you to memorize and document every single one. Getting really proficient at navigating all of the service materials and resources from an OEM, I think is job number one for every repair, whether it's collision, glass, PDR, mechanical, whatever you work in. Making sure that you understand the resources from an OEM and how they change quickly. Just to give you an example of that, the course that we got for this class from Nissan was 2 years old, and all the cars in here are brand new. So we had to update the course to support the newest vehicles. And literally, when we were getting ready to launch the class, Nissan pushed out a service bulletin that the lane camera measurements were incorrect in the manual, and that you needed to go to the bulletin instead of the manual. So it's very tough to try and memorize that or create a cheat sheet or any of those kinds of things, just because it changes so fast. And like I said, the Rogue has completely different systems than everything else in this room. So, it just changes so fast, and a shop staying current is going to be critical going forward.
Just another question has just come through from Jerry again, Jake. We talked about the fact that the technicians in the repair shops will obviously need to be trained to succeed, to make sure this kind of helps, and that's going to cost time and money. From your experience from working with customers in the US, and I know we have some experiences in the UK, but from a time and efficiency perspective, from a repairer's point of view, what's the time period it takes for once we start to talk to the repairer and ask them to set the boards up and to set the calibration up? What length of time is that taking repairers for them to do that before we start taking control of that car?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you that just from the attendees of this class, the first day, Bill, would you say it takes them 2 to 3 hours to figure out their first one? They really struggle on their first one, because they're trying to take what 25 pages of information is telling you and apply that to a car. And so it's like anything else, Richard. When you rode your bike the first time, you crashed a couple times. So it's just repetition and seat time, and understanding what the process is trying to tell you. You're trying to center the vehicle. You're trying to get the target at a specified distance. You're trying to make sure that you don't have any environmental failures around alignments or a body structure that's bent or any of those kinds of things. I find that collision repairers that take this class typically pick it up a little quicker because they aren't really savvy on scan tools, and mechanical will tell you that if there's something wrong, a DTC will be present, and that's not always the case. So in collision, they're used to looking at gaps and paint and body structure. So if there's something twisted in the front end, they have an eye for that. And so it's like anything else. Once you start doing a couple of radar calibrations, couple of camera calibrations, you can typically get one set up in 30, 45 minutes and be finished if there's no issues. If the car is fighting you because of an environmental failure or a car failure, then obviously it could take longer. But, if everything is on the vehicle as whole and it's been repaired properly, you can move through them pretty quickly once you've got a couple under your belt.
Thanks, Jake.
Yep.
Mark, I think we're done. Mark, so I don't know if you want to pick up now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, thank you very much indeed, guys. Fantastic stuff there, Jake. Thanks very much. I know it's very early in the morning where you are, so you've done a remarkably good job.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys having us today.
Absolute pleasure. If anyone who's tuned in has any more questions, and obviously, do fire away, send them to either myself or Richard. And we will obviously share all details, etc., with everyone who's joined us today. A few things stand out for me. I think one of your quotes was "Scan tools don't save the world," and you've spoken, really strongly about kind of technician training, keeping skills up to date, which is evident throughout the industry at the moment. So, increasingly important with everything that you've shown us today as well. So great stuff, real technical insight into what you guys are doing. Really appreciate your time. Really appreciate everybody for joining us. Huge thank you to obviously to Jake and Richard. And again, keep us posted. Let us know your thoughts. Drop any comments in the chat right now before you depart. And Richard's details have just gone in the chat there, his email address. Drop him a line if you need to find out anything more. And I'm sure we can also connect you with Jake should you have any more technical queries. But thanks very much for joining us, everybody. And we look forward to seeing you soon.
There's a reason ASE and OEM training matters. True repair professionals understand this, and it's the reason they partner with asTech. Our patented cloud-based software was created to improve the customer experience and allows access to hundreds of ASE and dealer-trained technicians. Today's vehicle electronic systems are complex. They can control steering, braking, and acceleration. Working with our calibration centers provides the technical data and know-how required to repair compromised advanced driver assist systems properly. Our asTech mobile team is available in over 30 markets and at your service in those times when you need an expert set of hands and guidance. We consider it a privilege to help you thrive, which is why we work tirelessly to provide resources, advice, and most importantly, documentation for our customers. When you work with asTech, you can always count on the right tool and the right tech.